Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Hello, everybody. My name is Christian Lamont. I'm with Latino Outdoors Storytelling, Communications, and Advocacy. And I'm thrilled today to have a wonderful conversation called Taking Back Cinco de Mayo. So what is Taking Back Cinco de Mayo? I think it starts with no more Cinco de Drinko. Let's take this opportunity to honor and enhance Cinco de Mayo as a day of action to defend our lands, our waters, and our cultures in the spirit of the Batalla de Puebla. To that end, I would love to introduce two wonderful organizers, advocates, storytellers, and human beings. Pedro and Olivia from Green Latinos, a wonderful organization who does an incredible amount of on-the-ground work, advocating, pushing for legislation, being activists, and encouraging their community to get up, to get loud, and to use their voices to make a difference in all of our lives and to save our planet. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Pedro and Olivia. All right, welcome. How are you both?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. It's that time of the year. We did this last year, and I know that some things have updated with this initiative, with this campaign. But first and foremost, could you both introduce yourselves? Let us know a little bit about where you live, where you're from, a little bit of your family background, if you're comfortable, and what you do with our friends at Green Latinos. Olivia?
Sure. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. My name is Olivia Juarez. I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm from, as I like to say, the valley shaped by Great Salt Lake. I'm the Public Land Program Director at Green Latinos, where I've been for a couple of years, although I've been a part of the Green Latinos Comunidad for many, many years since my career in public land conservation started. I have a background of Mexican American heritage and Northern New Mexican heritage, different from my mom's and my dad's side. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Pedro. I'm calling in from Fresno, California on occupied Yokuts land, and I'm the public lands advocate with Green Latinos. And at Green Latinos, we have a mission to generally increase Latino, Latina, Latinx representation in problem solving on our nation's biggest environmental crises, specifically also on public lands. I also have a background in Latin American history and in education as well too. So this campaign has been a really exciting opportunity to kind of bridge several of my different identities, and I'm really excited for the conversation to come. So thanks for having us.
Absolutely, and welcome to you both. Just speaking of identities, I suppose I should share a little bit about my own. I was born in Mexico City, and my family goes back generations and generations. We are tried and true Chilangos, as they like to call us, and a lot of this talk of revolution, of battles, of these kinds of moments are in my family's blood. I mentioned this last year, but my great-great-grandfather was a soldier, then a captain, then a general in the Mexican Revolution, fighting alongside basically, his own fellow country people. And it was through their vision, fighting back against being oppressed, fighting back against what they saw as injustices, that the people spoke up, and against the imperialistic forces, against the colonizers, as they were so, that is the history of Mexico. And in 1914 through 1917, they fought against each other. And so my grandpa was a son of the revolution. And so that was always something we heard about in the household. And you speak up, you say something, you see an injustice, and you do something about it. And so this conversation, though it is based around Cinco de Mayo and a battle that happened in the 1800s, it's so relevant, I think, to so many larger conversations. And I think the first time that I heard about the Take Back Cinco de Mayo campaign, as many of us did, was on social media. You're scrolling, there's a million things that are on your feed, a million things pulling at your attention in life, whether it's news, whether it's responsibilities, family. And then you see this thing that says Take Back Cinco, and you're like, oh, that's bold. I like this. Especially in a world where you're inundated, like I mentioned, the Stop the Cinco de Drinko thing, where Cinco de Mayo has always been, at least in my lifetime, the kind of butt end of a joke, where you see people in offensive play mustaches and sombreros, and there's just bottom level stereotypes about Mexicans in particular during this day. And so when I saw that, I clicked. I had to learn more. And then I went to the Green Latinos page, and I found that, it's an initiative, it's a movement, there's a statement, there's a reason behind this bold social media graphic. And so I wanted to know, what is Take Back Cinco de Mayo, and when did it start?
Well, since 2019, the Green Latinos community has been coming together to take back Cinco de Mayo, to push back against the Cinco de Drinko and Drinko de Mayo campaigns that you see pervasively celebrated on May 5th annually. Cinco de Mayo has some serious historical ramifications that I'll leave it to Pedro to explain in a bit. But suffice it to say is we're taking back Cinco de Mayo to be inspired and be courageous from the lessons and the histories learned at the Batalla de Puebla. So Cinco de Mayo is a day in history where the Mexican army overcame the French Empire in the town of Puebla, Mexico, on May 5th, 1862. This was a complete underdog story of accomplishment. The Mexican forces were vastly outnumbered, but with the ingenuity and the courageous contributions of local guerrilla tactics, they overcame the French army that had more soldiers, better weapons, probably better defense, and overall, strategies. And on that day, Puebla won. They won that battle. And when you win a battle, it's not just about like the people that you overcome, right? Winning a battle for your place is winning a battle for your land, for your water, for your air, for your cultures. And we look at that as a pretty clear allegory to one of the greatest battles that we're all involved in today, which is the battle against the climate crisis, against climate injustices, against sacrificing our lands, our airs, and our waters for things that otherwise will harm our health. And then our battles for our cultures as well, to stop the Cinco de Drinko and the stereotyping and the monolithizing, if that's a word, of Latino culture that happens on Cinco de Mayo, by taking back Cinco de Mayo to honor and enhance this day as a day of action where we take the spirit of La Batalla de Puebla to advance our fights for climate conservation and cultural justice.
I love that overview. I love the framing. And, we talk about being outnumbered 2-to-1 kind of scenario. And that often feels like, between Latino Outdoors and Green Latinos and so many of our kindred organizations out there, that it does kind of occasionally feel like we're outnumbered, but we've got the soul, we've got the spirit, we've got the ingenuity and the creativity, that communication that we can rally support, and we can be like, this is happening, but it also ties into this. This is happening because of this. What can we do about it? How can we join together against these almost insurmountable odds and make a difference. Take our own Battle de Puebla, and I wouldn't say it's a call to arms, but it's definitely a call to action that we can all join in on. And I really appreciate the fact that Green Latinos kind of leads this charge, and made an important day in history so much broader. And it's not just about the Cinco de Mayo, and it's not just about that one battle, but it's about so many battles, how they bring, how they have to do with our freedoms, our liberties, the earth that we're a part of, the climate, everything that we're inheriting, and then everything that we're passing on. So I know you spoke a little bit about it, but Pedro, I was wondering, to you, what's the greater significance of Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah, that's a big question, but I'm happy to answer. Maybe I'll also start a little bit with some of my own like family history as well too. My mother's family comes from Nuevo León, Mexico, and my father's family comes from Nayarit, the western coastal state, and both states actually played an important role in Mexican history throughout independence to the revolution and even modern times as well. And so, Cinco de Mayo, again, like I think it's more of a tool to really understand the role that Latinos have played in shaping Western hemispheric and global history, but also a tool to share and understand one of the biggest organizing efforts in all of human history, which was for the Americas to win and retain their independence. And so for a little bit of context for, the actual role is, maybe I'll start off with saying Mexico has been, as the modern state of Mexico, has been independent for about 100 years less than it's actually been colonized. And so that's to say, Cinco de Mayo is, a lot of people maybe might think it's Mexican Independence Day. And the best way yeah, head shake to that one. The best way I help people understand it is that it was not Mexican Independence Day, but it was important for Mexico to retain its independence. And so Cinco de Mayo is roughly in the 1860s, about 40 years after Mexico had won its independence. And so in early Mexican independence, after, again, 300 years of being colonized, you have series after series of different encroachments from other European countries. Actually, the French did attack Mexico in the 1830s. You also have a series of incursions from the United States. And so, Mexico loses about half of its territory in the war against the United States as well, too. And so this is like one episode in a larger series of colonial powers chipping away at the independence that Mexico had won. And so in a nutshell, this day was symbolic because while they were victorious on this one day, the French still ultimately occupied Mexico City, but nevertheless, Mexico still was able to drive out the French Imperial Army from the Americas ultimately. And I think in that way, it really is an important kind of like episode in understanding like our larger human experience to win and exercise self-determination for our communities, for, the lands that we live on and cohabitate on. But also throughout the Americas, Cinco de Mayo represents one in many different episodes of different countries winning and maintaining their independence as well, too. So I think we also really try to, especially this year, broaden up the narrative to say this is one day, but it represents the larger cultural inheritance of our communities fighting for a better country, a better future, better environment, and more self-determination ultimately. And I think it's also a really good example because it's one of the largest examples of how a hemisphere, a larger community, works towards a larger goal for independence. And so we also need action on this level to address environmental injustice and the climate crisis as well, too.
I appreciate that. And I wanted to go back a little bit to how I found out about the Take Back Cinco campaign. Olivia, I was wondering, could you share with us a little bit about like what your impressions are of Cinco de Mayo, and then working on this campaign? Like, how did those two reconcile? Like, what was Cinco before and now to you?
Well, with a Mexican dad and Mexican grandma from Guerrero and Mexico City, I could say, I would relate to the experience of a lot of people that don't have like heritage in Puebla specifically, because other than in Puebla, Mexico, Cinco de Mayo really isn't celebrated. It's observed throughout the Mexican state, but Cinco de Mayo is a really big thing throughout the United States, but it wasn't for me. We don't have our carne asada on Cinco de Mayo. We don't, do anything in observance of it. My experience of Cinco de Mayo probably most significantly was being in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is doing better now at being more representative of different cultures in the night scene. For example, like nowadays you have Latin nights at a lot of different bars. But before a couple of years from now, your one Latin night that you would get at a bar the whole year was on Cinco de Mayo. So my experience was that, like, in part, it's a big party time that corporations take advantage of to bring in customers to their bar or their restaurant. And then, of course, you see all of like the head caps at grocery stores selling Tostitos and guacamole ingredients. And, it really has just been a highly commercialized time. I won't say that it's only that, because I do think there's good work that community-led organizations do to fight against that by authentically celebrating Mexican culture on Cinco de Mayo, and maybe having like community festivals and baile folklorico and all of that. But really personally and specifically towards Cinco de Mayo, it wasn't any observance personally or that I saw in the world that was there to say, like, let's remember and honor La Batalla de Puebla, because that really isn't the point of it, as marketers want us to see it.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the fact that there is progress, right? And this is spurring on like more conversations, more inclusion, like, the one night versus now there's a larger cultural effort. When we were talking about this, it made me think of Dia de Muertos, and how it started as a very, very like commercialized thing. Well, no, sorry. It started as an indigenous thing in Central America, these traditions, these cultures, parts of Mexico. And growing up in Mexico, like, yes, you would have your altar and those kinds of things, but it wasn't like this massive Pixar and Target and all these things that you see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it now is. But out of that commercialization has come this broader and I feel like more healthy conversation, which is like, well, what other countries celebrate a Day of the Dead? How do other Latin American countries and Central American and South American, Caribbean countries, how did they celebrate their loved ones and their passing? Is there any overlap into how Mexico and Ecuador view marigolds? Is there any overlap in these traditions? And you see more and more of these articles. You see, if there's a parade celebrating Dia de los Muertos or Dia de Muertos or an altar, you start seeing a little bit more about the other countries who are like, it may not be as commercialized as this one, as the Mexican one, but we too have our experiences. Is there anything like that in the Take Back Cinco conversation and movement that you all have noticed, whether it's in your research, other movements that, again, they may not be framed under Cinco de Mayo, but they are similar battles, similar efforts, similar people-led movements that may not be a battle or one day, but maybe something that happened in a different country on a different day that kind of to you connects to the overall piece that we're talking. We're including more countries, we're including more experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could say, one of the cut across kind of themes here is, let's just say like independence, quote unquote, right? Because like the degree that benefited everyone and to the degree that like different communities were included or not included is like a big conversation. But just on independence itself, I think that's one of the cut across themes for the entire Western Hemisphere. I mean, when you as people who maybe experience schooling in the United States, you learn about the American Revolution. But I think this is an opportunity to understand independence through communities of color and different countries as well too. And so, for example, the Haitian Revolution, which Haiti was the first country besides the United States to win its independence, actually, from the French as well too, occurred from the 1790s to the early 1800s. And so like Haiti was actually the first independent country and actually served as an inspiration point for other different countries, including what we now know as Mexico. But you have, even in Mexican history, you have in the independence movement, you have the Mexican Revolution, which is actually, I argue, a direct tie to the Cinco de Mayo, since actually there was a military general that was captured at Puebla. He escaped. Porfirio Diaz is his name, and ultimately became the dictator of Mexico for about 35 years and set the context for the revolution. But you also have different efforts like the Sandinistas in Nicaragua trying to assert independence from U.S. influence, actually, or the Cuban Revolution in the 1890s, and also in the 1950s and 60s. You could also even go back to pre-independence to different tribal-led efforts like the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. And so like the biggest cut across theme is like there's no shortage of different examples where people have tried to organize their community and to try to assert their own self-determination for a better future. Like there's no shortage of that. So in one way, the history of the Americas for the last 500 years has been characterized by colonialization, but it's also been characterized by like just resistance also. And partly, and due to that resistance as well too, is like why people like us are still here, and so I think like that in itself, like, while again, there has been different levels of success and different levels of oppression and, different levels of liberation, that kind of resistance, I think is one of the things we want to really use this opportunity to like have people re-engage with their history and re-engage with that level of culture, because culture is more than kind of like different dances and like salsas and music. So we want to include like that conversation in that culture that cuts across different communities in the Americas and really over the globe.
Yeah, if I can ecologize kind of what I'm hearing you say as our leader and founder at Latino Outdoors, Jose, likes to say. When we talk about sovereignty, independence, self-determination, that really comes back down to our land, our water, and our air. The project of colonialism has for centuries worked to separate people from nature, to separate people from each other, to cause a lot of the fighting and oppression that persists today. And so, I really just want to iterate that, like, the importance today when we think about how we can be inspired from like the Jayuya uprising or the Sandinista revolution or La Batalla de Puebla is these are all moments when people were able to find a success, retain control of their lands, of their waters, and thereby their cultures and everything that's imbued in that. Culture, like Pedro said, is more than the food and the dance. It's the language, it's the way of thinking, it's the way of being in relationship with each other. And so the greater importance moving forward that we're hoping for everybody to take away with Cinco de Mayo is that not necessarily that we're trying to cancel Cinco de Mayo and tell people you can't party, because it's like, that is one of those light and fun things about culture that we love. Green Latinos very much brings together people through celebrating with food, with culture, with community. But we think we can do that, and we can make a difference by being inspired from these times in history throughout the Americas, as we call it today, by also fighting for our own control of our lands and waters to meet our significant climate and conservation goals before us, because we have a lot to do to stop emissions, to allow lands to exist in their natural state, to restore degraded lands and health in over polluted communities. And we, charge forward in that spirit of liberation to have these kinds of healthy, ecologically thriving futures.
I really appreciate that you we don't want to tell anybody you're doing it wrong, and at the same time it's important to show them there are multiple ways. It's complicated, it's layered, and so even a little thing well, you don't have to stop the celebration, you don't have to stop being joyful. And I think that's something that's part of Latinidad in general, really. I know there's no such thing as a monolith, but that if there was joy and this way to take the harshest elements of history and oppression and climate on our shoulders and still find a way to dance, still find a way to laugh, still find a way to create music and to create art and to celebrate, I think that is part of all of our nature. And so while we say it's important to know this about Cinco de Mayo and all these other movements, it's important to acknowledge that the climate is impacting all of our communities. It's also important to say, and yet we thrive, and yet within that resilience, and yet our existence is our resistance, and part of our existence is that joy. It is that happiness. It is that that drive to I don't want to say laugh it off, but to hug each other and to come together and work together to do it with a little bit of a little chispa, with a little spark in your eye and in your heart. So we've got this Take Back Cinco de Mayo Day of Action. And I wanted to ask you all, what is that action? What action can we take? What action are you all taking? And then what can the average person do? If we don't know much about Cinco de Mayo and we're just scrolling through and we see, as I saw, this ooh, wow, this graphic or this call to action. What is the call to action? What is the day of action? And then how can each one of us get involved with this? Who wants to go?
I'll start and maybe leave off half-baked for Pedro to finish. So what we're aiming to do with this campaign is enhance all of the great celebrations that are happening on Cinco de Mayo by having a national day of action that we're launching this year, where you can support by signing the declaration to take back Cinco de Mayo, by asking municipal, state, and federal government to recognize Cinco de Mayo as a national day of action for protecting our lands, our waters, our airs, and to stand against the stereotyping and other appropriations and mischaracterizations of Mexican and Latino culture on Cinco de Mayo. So one thing that you can do right now to help a National Day of Action be established is to sign the declaration that is essentially a petition calling for Cinco de Mayo to be a National Day of Action. And there it is, right below streaming, where you can sign the Take Back Cinco declaration. Pedro, how would you add to the significance of the Day of Action?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's again, it's kind of coming to this with like the every day is Earth Day vibes, where every day is a good day to serve your community, and again work to protect what generations before us have won and gifted us and entrusted us as well too. And so I definitely like encourage y'all to kind of like follow up with Green Latinos like social media channels. That'll be another important way where we'll be sharing educational short videos. We have a 90-minute webinar, which we call an encuentro, where we'll be talking at depth on these issues and a couple more that we haven't been able to touch on today. But more broadly, I think it's like really an opportunity for everyone just to learn more about history. And I say this in like the big H meta level history, where it's more than just dates. Historical learning and historical examination is a window for us to understand like our experience as humans and our experience as like cognizant beings who have stumbled onto this beautiful planet and are like trying to figure out what to do. So I think like even just like learning about whether it's Mexican history or your own cultural history as well too, I think that's like a really solid way to like have a body of information and a framework to inform your like actions to protect and enhance and serve your own community as well too. Because really where we're at now is in the same way that Cinco de Mayo was an important episode in like protecting what we want and protecting our independence. Now, with the climate crisis and everything, we're kind of faced with a similar but parallel challenge of protecting what we have now. And so definitely I encourage y'all to, learn more and try to like plug into serve your community, because it's going to be something where all of us are going to have to chip in for us to win this big victory that generations before us have contributed to, but there's still lots of work to be done.
And in the spirit of guerrilla fighting strategy that won La Batalla de Puebla, I want to encourage everybody watching today on Cinco de Mayo to take this day of action outdoors, to take it into your own hands, to serve your own community through the ways that you have direct power to, whether it's going out and picking up trash that you see laying around in your community all of the time, seeding, pollinating plants, or just doing something that is going to help others, including the more than human world, to not just survive but thrive where you're living. In defense of our cultural self-determination and just like earnestness, you could also like bring together your friends and family and talk about special cultural things that you want to protect, that you want to honor, cook a meal together, listen to music that your grandparents listen to, look through old photos if you have them. Cinco de Mayo, in addition to protecting our lands and our waters, is a good time to just honor and iterate how valuable our cultures are, so that we can continue to protect them. Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, is also an important day for justice for our Indigenous communities. And I know Christian's pretty passionate about this. So Christian, do you want to talk about the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women as well?
Yeah, thank you. It was there was this wonderful experience. I wish that everybody who's watching could partake in this kind of amazing workshop experience that we had at the Green Latino Summit last year. And it was specifically about the Take Back Cinco campaign and initiative and day of action. And people broke up into smaller groups, and debate was had, and things were learned, and discussions were had. And one of them was about the Day of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse peoples in our community, which is also on the 5th of May. And so I wanted to acknowledge that while this is a day of celebration and reckoning, it is also a day of calling to awareness the planet, the peoples of the planet, the plights of our brothers and their sisters, and everybody in between, and the fact that these don't compete. They are very much one and the same as the day of action. And so call your elected representatives, push for more awareness, push for funding, push for action, so that community members and our planet and our future are all tied in one and the same. It's not one or the other. It's not Cinco de Mayo or MMIW Day. It is both, and we hope to amplify equally, because they are as equally as important, the planet and the people who make this planet what it is. So I wanted to mention that, and also like pull back the curtain again to this conversation, this workshop, because it is so multi-level, multi-layered what Green Latinos is doing. You know, you all were talking about corporate accountability. You're talking about like messaging. You were talking about bringing in other people in other situations. What is the day of action? How can you push legislators? And so my sincere appreciation and gratitude to you both and your entire team for taking this initiative on, and for figuring out how to thread so many needles and really make it a call to action, a day of action. And then every day leading up to it, that you're building awareness and then not letting off. Because I know that the second that Cinco de Mayo happens, on May 6th, you all are back at work doing everything to make sure that the next year it grows and grows and grows. And so my request to everybody listening and to everybody in our communities and our shared communities is share about Take Back Cinco, reclaim, be a part of this movement, participate in the encuentros when they come to a community near you, amplify these stories, sign those petitions. Don't let the weight of the world get to you so much right at this moment that you're not taking action. Turn that fatigue and that frustration into some sort of action, and follow the lead of Green Latinos and other organizations, and channel that frustration into some sort of action, into some sort of movement. And we invite you all, join this movement, join Take Back Cinco, and go visit greenlatinos.org, follow them online, ask Olivia and Pedro any questions that you might have, and the rest of the team. They're always there. They are a community resource as much as a leader, as much as the tip of the spear for this movement. So I just wanted to say that, and I will leave the rest, the wrap up to you, Olivia, and then Pedro, if you guys would like it.
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap by saying that our environmental liberation is a very intersectional and cyclical thing. And so that's why we have confidence that and hope that everybody, not just people with Mexican heritage, will come together with the Green Latinos community to stand against the Cinco de Drinko nonsense on Cinco de Mayo, be inspired by the success at La Batalla de Puebla, and throughout moments of resistance and revolution throughout the Americas for self-determination, and apply that inspiration into our fights for our environmental liberation. Colonialism, extraction, violence against all peoples, and especially indigenous peoples in the Americas and globally, are inextricably tied. There isn't a world where people are no longer sacrificed until we no longer sacrifice our lands and our waters and our airsheds. So please take back Cinco de Mayo with us to get at this intersection and sign the declaration today.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up with saying every single one of us and every single one of our families and our animal friends and the ecosystems that we reside on all have a right to be healthy and resilient and happy. And our communities are very powerful and beautiful, and so we have everything at our disposal to realize this better world. And this means confronting our own history, confronting the legacy of colonialization and injustices, but really leaning into these conversations because we know that something better is out there. So thank you again for joining us. I hope you all learned at least something from us today, and feel free to reach out for more information or keep these conversations running. So thanks again for your time. And thank you to Latino Outdoors for hosting us again.
Yes, mil gracias, Latino Outdoors.
Absolutely. And as they say on the streets, el pueblo unido jamás será vencido. The people united will never be defeated. So thank you all so much. We can work on a better world together. Appreciate you both. Thank you for taking your time today, and keep up the good fight, honestly.
Gracias.
Thank you both. Bye.